In 2024, I introduce you to Shelve It or Scrap It, a monthly reading challenge where I read randomly selected books from these stacks on the floor of my library. The goal was to get all of the books from the floor onto my shelves or scrapped into my unhaul pile by the end of the year. We started 2024 with 70 books in the stacks, but despite shelving 35 books and scrapping 57 books throughout the year, holding 64 less books than in 2023 and thus making a positive dent in my own TBR as a whole, we actually ended the year with one more book in the stacks than when we started. So in 2025, I have to up my game. The rules remain the same, but I now have to read the same amount of books per episode as I've hauled in the previous month, so that by the end of this year, I will hopefully reach my ultimate goal of getting all of the stacks off the floor and into a proper home, either on my shelves or on somebody else's. In episode 13, I shelved 10 books and I scrapped 15, and we are going to be starting episode 14 with 60 books in the stacks. Hello my guys, welcome to episode 14, I think, of Shelve It or Scrap It. The more we go up through the numbers, the less I'm going to be able to keep track of where we're actually up to with this series. Today we are going to be doing something a little bit different. It's something we have done before though, because we are going to be using Becca's Bookopoly to help us pick the books for episode 14. So if you're unfamiliar with Shelve It or Scrap It, well then I will put the playlist down in the description box so you can catch up on all 13 episodes before you watch this one. But essentially we're trying to get all of these books off the floor of my library onto the shelves through a variety of means. But if you're unfamiliar with Bookopoly, which at this point I feel like is more likely, this used to be my most popular series on YouTube, guys. She doesn't get the respect that she deserves anymore. But essentially this is a TBR game that I used to play where I rolled 2 6-sided dice and I had to read books that fit the prompts that I landed on as I went around the board. So it's been a few years since I've done Bookopoly regularly now, but I have used Bookopoly for vlogs in the past. There are 2 Bookopoly episodes of Shelve It or Scrap It. One is the regular Bookopoly, one is the Halloween version, Spookopoly, and today we are going to be bringing her back out again to choose our books for episode 14, and I'm so excited. I've missed her so much. I am going to link a video down in the description box. It's an old one, so be kind, and it is going to contain a full tour of the board, all of the spaces that we have here, and also the basic rules of Bookopoly, because they are what we are going to be following in today's video. But honestly, if you don't want to do all that homework to find out what's going on, it's pretty self-explanatory when we get going, so don't worry. In terms of the state of the stacks, we have one more book in them currently than we ended episode 13 on. So I haven't filmed my February unboxing yet, so I haven't added those books into it. They will be added before episode 15, probably along with my March unboxing books as well, so we're going to have a little bit of an increase in numbers there. But going into episode 14, we have 60 books currently in the stacks. As per the rules of 2025, we have to read at least the same amount of books that I hauled in the previous month for each episode of Shelve It or Scrap It. And in February, I hauled 7 books in total, all of which were included in my January unboxing video. But if you watched episode 13, you will know that I learned some information about one of those books. I learned that one of them was going to be reverse harem as you go further into the series, and that is not a trope I enjoy, so I decided to unhaul that one without reading it. So I'm actually just going to be aiming for 6 books in this video, because I mean, I hauled one, I've now unhauled it. I feel like that's fair. Yeah? Does that work? There is a chance that we may end up reading slightly more than 6 books in this video, because there are a couple of ways the Bookopoly could make that happen. The first is that if we roll a double, which is the same number displayed on each of the 6-sided dice, then I will have to add a roll. So we'll say that my starting number is 5, which is what it normally is in Bookopoly, to give me a little bit of room. If I roll no doubles, I will just add an extra one of my own volition to bump us up to 6, and if I do, we'll take that into account as well. And then of course we do have the possibility that the final book for this video would be a shelve, meaning that I would have to pick a book from the shelves to balance that out, which I mean, we'll see if that happens. Hopefully not. It's always my luck though, like I'll have a video, like an episode full of trash books, and then the last book that I read I'll love, and I'll have to extend the episode because of it. But I'm very eager to find out what our first book of this episode is going to be, so let's see. It's Bookopoly time. I'm so excited. So we will be starting where we ended the last time that we used the Bookopoly board, which was actually for episode 5 of Shelve It or Scrap It. And the last prompt that we landed on was this other prompt. So I'll rotate the board this way. And our first roll for episode 14 is a 3. Oh no. 1, 2, 3. Scroll through Goodreads. We are getting started with a bang. This is really funny actually, because I remember the first time that we did Bookopoly for Shelve It or Scrap It, I was excited because it was the first time that I was going to have a little bit of choice of the books that I was going to read in the episode, instead of just using the random number generator and being forced to read something. And then Bookopoly pretty much made me read every single book. Like, I had very little choice in what I actually read in that episode. And I feel like that is going to be happening again. So I have opened Goodreads, but I'm going to start a screen recording. We are just going to scroll until I find a book that is in the stacks, which has recently, because sometimes I go on for fun, I'm weird like that, I go on Goodreads and I just scroll to see if this came up, because I don't really play Bookopoly anymore, what would be the book that I had to read. But we're doing it for realsies, so it's probably going to be a subscription box book. I'm gonna want to read that because I do want to read it, but it's not out yet, so I don't have it. So I'm going to try not to linger too much on anything, because I've noticed I do own that, but it's not in the stacks. I feel like because I have subscription box books here, we will definitely find one. But I've noticed that I don't own as many like hyped and popular books that people are constantly reading as I used to. So it's been taking me a little bit longer to find anything. Oh, do I have that one? No, I put that one. I'm pretty sure I shelved that one in the episode where I tried a chapter and unhauled 10 books. That's unfortunate. That is one of my favourite books. Love that. Lies of Loch Lamora, not in the stacks. That is not in the stacks. This Woven Kingdom by Tahara Murphy, which is down here. So it is Nina that was reading this. Thank you, Nina. But this is a surprise actually. I was expecting something a lot newer to come up, but this one is a few years old now. It's from January 2022. It's an Illumicrate edition, and I think Aaron from Booked and Busy read this, was it last year, and just binged through the entire series. So I'm cautiously optimistic. I don't think I've read anything from Tahara Murphy before. I know that Tahara Murphy writes Shatter Me, and I feel like that's a series that I've just missed the boat on. I'm too old to enjoy that now, although I do appreciate that it's angsty. And so hopefully this one will be a hit with me. I also love the Illumicrate edition. I don't really remember what it's about. I think it is vaguely romantic, and actually while we're on the topic, I feel like I've read a lot of fantasy romance recently. So if there's any genre I can avoid throughout this episode, it's going to be fanro. Like I'm not into it right now. But the synopsis on this one says, clashing empires, forbidden romance, and a long forgotten queen destined to save her people. To all the world, Eliza is a disposable servant, not the long lost heir to an ancient Jin kingdom, forced to hide in plain sight. The Crown Prince Cameron has heard the prophecies foretelling the death of his king, but he can never have imagined that the servant girl with the strange eyes, the girls he can't put out of his mind, will one day uproot his kingdom and the world. So same old, tale as old as time, but one that I very much enjoy. We have a princess who's the lost heir to a kingdom, and a crown prince. A crown prince. So it sounds like something that I would enjoy. How big is it? Oh, it's like nearly 500 pages, but honestly, literally the size of this text is a sight for sore eyes given the size of the text of the books that I've been reading recently. So yeah, we'll make a start on this one and I'll let you know how it goes. We are just going to ignore that my hair looks so crazy right now. I don't know why it's sticking up, it's just damp. But I need to bring you guys an update on this Woven Kingdom by Tahara Murphy, because I've been slowly chipping away at it, and it's actually not that slow is the thing. Like, it's a pretty fast read. So when I am chipping away at it, I'm chipping away at larger chunks than I think that I am. And now I'm almost halfway through this book and I have not told you anything about it. So this is one that I guess I would predict as a shelve, or I would have predicted before I started it. And I'm still pretty confidently heading down that route. There are definitely things that I really like about this, including the writing style, which I love. It's reminding me a lot of like Laini Taylor in Strange the Dreamer, although take that with a pinch of salt because it has been years since I read that book. But it has a very like lyrical, beautiful writing style, which takes a little bit of adjustment. It takes a couple of chapters to sink into it. And I would also say that this is predominantly a romantic story. I really just don't know what the point of the plot is at this point. I think I remember, yes, that it's says that the main character is a long lost heir to an ancient Jin kingdom. You only actually find that out, I think, just before the page 200 mark. I'm currently on page 234. And we're essentially following this girl who is a servant. She is apparently very well educated, which she is constantly berated for because servants are not supposed to be well educated. And she is working in this manor house. Now, she doesn't even have an official position here yet, so she's even more of a servant than the regular servants are, and is treated pretty terribly. We find out very early on in this book that she is also a Jin, and Jin are treated terribly in this kingdom. They have finally struck some sort of peace treaty within the last 20 years that gives Jin equal rights to humans, but not really. And so she is kind of free to live in this world, but she definitely has a lower status than regular humans. So this story starts off where she is taking a package to a woman, because she's also like a seamstress on the side and she's trying to make a bit of money for herself. So she's made this dress and she's taken it to a woman when she's accosted by this thief who wants her package to sell for money to buy food. She uses her Jin powers, like her strength, to break free from this thief, and unbeknownst to her, the crown prince is watching her. So he thinks that because of her behavior that she's not a normal servant girl, that she has to be a spy. So after she leaves this boy in the snow, he goes to the boy, asks him like what she said, and he's like, she didn't say much, she just told me where I could go and get food. And the prince doesn't believe him, so he threatens to take him to the magistrates, which I guess are like the police force in here. And the boy tries to kill himself instead of going to the magistrates, and the prince saves him. So this causes conflict for a couple of reasons. It puts this girl more firmly on the prince's radar. It also causes a bit of stir with the public because they don't know why the prince stepped in to save the life of a peasant boy. And it gives this peasant boy also a level of privilege that he had not previously had, because he needs to stay alive to create this good image that the crown prince is a good person, because obviously if anything happens to this boy now, it's not really going to look too good on the royal family. We're also at a point where the crown prince is getting ready to become the king. Like, his grandfather has called him back home to educate him on what it takes to be a ruler, and kind of like really properly training him to step up into this role when his grandfather eventually steps down. So I would say that the plot of this is predominantly romantic, because in terms of the prince, he's only really obsessed with her. The whole thing at the beginning I did find a little bit unbelievable, where he sees this girl and he's suddenly like adamant that she is up to no good, that she is super relevant, that she is a spy. Like, not only is she doing something she shouldn't be, it is something like to the extreme, you know, like she's not just a petty thief, like she must be this very well trained, fully fledged spy. And his fixation on her and the element of kind of like privilege that was uncovered with the assumptions that he made about her, I thought was a little bit unbelievable at the time. And I don't really like him as a character, if I'm being honest, because of the way that he keeps assuming things about people and having to be checked. It's just, I don't really like his mentality. That being said, I am enjoying the narrative of this book. I like the main character Eliza enough. Like, she is not doing anything incredible right now. She's mainly just keeping her head down and trying to survive. Obviously, as I know that she's the main character of this series and the long lost heir to this kingdom, I assume that she's going to gain confidence and step into this role eventually. But right now, she's just very disheartened, very downtrodden, and trying to get by. And at the point where I'm at in this book is probably where we're going to have some pivotal change here, where she has to stop this pursuit of just getting by and actually be a little bit more proactive about her future and about this kingdom that she is supposedly the heir to. I do really like the writing style though in the world. It is a little bit confusing because I always like to know the whys, okay? Like the whys, the hows, like the nitty gritty of what is going on. And there are elements of this world that I feel are unexplained. Like, I'm pretty sure at one point one of the characters says that the trees are magenta, but they don't really go into why. So sometimes I feel like I get a little bit of a disjointed picture of this world. Like, I am definitely assuming that because we're dealing with Jin here, that we are set in a world inspired by the Middle East, or like surrounding the Middle East, somewhere in that area of the world. But then I'm thrown by the descriptions of the places a little bit, because we have pomegranate groves within the palace gardens, which checks, but then there's also snow. Like, the main character mentions snow. So I guess I'm struggling a little bit to get get to grips with this world, because I mean, obviously there's artistic license, like you can have pomegranate groves and you can have snow and this can be a completely new world, but a lot of world building does tend to be grounded in the real world, and especially when we're talking about something that derives from real world mythology and like Arabic mythology, my mind just assumes and fills in the blanks that like, okay, this is a country or like a state or a kingdom that is heavily inspired by the Middle East, so I'm assuming that we're going to have that kind of landscape and that kind of climate, and I feel like Tahara Mafi is doing something a little bit different with this one in that regard. But I do find that I do keep getting thrown by things like that just are taking me out a little bit, because they go against this like picture in my mind of what I've imagined this world to be like. But definitely so far so good. I am hoping to finish it soon because it is a pretty quick read. At the minute, like I said, I'm pretty confident that it is going to have a romance plot in here. How I feel about it, I guess we'll see. Only time will tell. I have a lot of noise going on around me right now, so I apologize. The dehumidifier is going full blast, drying the laundry. Curtis is listening to progressive metal and doing the dishes in the kitchen. And Brie, in true retriever fashion, has just pulled a scrap of fabric out of her toy basket that she's now like chewing on ferociously while she tries to bait me into chasing her. But I'm 63% of the way through this book now. I am still enjoying it. I'm hoping to finish it today, which I mean is a big ask because I've got 37%, which is like just under 200 pages, I think. And it's 7:30, so I have plenty of time, but I'm already feeling a little bit sleepy. But something that I've noticed about this book that I'm not sure whether I enjoy or not is that they speak to each other as though they're in a period drama. And I can't, because I'm not a historical fiction or a historical romance fan, I can't tell if I like it or not. It reminds me a lot of classics. Like, it's reminding me of like Wuthering Heights, which is my favorite classic, but it's not what I really expected for the tone of the conversation. I'll read you a bit anyway, because it's not spoilery without context. She spun back, all tender emotion forgotten. You dare dismiss me from my own room? How do you manage to be so kind in one moment and so vexing in the next? He tilted his head at her. You are the first to think me capable of such dichotomy. I am in fact not known to possess so changeable a character, and I'm forced to wonder whether the source of your frustration is rooted elsewhere. Eliza's eyes went wide at the affront. You think the fault lies with me then? You think me inconstant? With all due respect, I would point out only that you welcomed my arrival with a promise to slit my throat and have since been moved to tears at least twice in my presence. I would hardly call that sort of behaviour constant. So I feel like it is like a very tense back and forth that is very reminiscent to me of like a classic romance. And I'm kind of vibing with it, but every so often they'll go on like a little tirade or start monologuing, and I'm like, wow, this is not even nostalgic, because obviously I'm not from the 1800s. I don't know if you knew that. I can't decide if I like it or not, or whether it's throwing me out of the story because it's unexpected. I am currently post-breakfast, but I'm pre-coffee, so apologies if I lack any coherence, but I did finish this Woven Kingdom by Tahara Mafi, and I was very unsure about what I was going to be doing about this book because I love Tahara Mafi's writing style. I have decided that I do really like this classic period drama kind of dialogue that we have running throughout here. I think because Tahara Mafi, I have read a book by Tahara Mafi before actually. It was one of her contemporary books. It was many, many years ago, and it was A Very Large Expanse of Sea. I think I gave it 3 stars. I'm not a YA contemporary girly, and I know that now. At the time I was exploring, but I have read a book from Tahara Mafi before, and in terms of this one, because obviously this is very different with it being a fantasy, I would definitely classify it as a fantasy romance, but it is something that really hones in on the longing and the pining between the characters. There's not really anything physical that happens. I think there's maybe like one kiss scene throughout here, so you're really leaning into the tension between them, the romantic tension, and I feel like the speech really leans into that, because like I said, it was reminding me of Wuthering Heights, so it was giving me that like Kathy and Heathcliff, we can never be together but we're obsessed with each other kind of energy. Still don't know how I feel about the male perspective in here, Cameron. I kind of want to believe him because I feel like we're setting him up to be a love interest here. I mean, we definitely are. That is the main theme of this book, is these two just kind of being into each other. The main character's kind of trying to get on with her life and she's just constantly worried, which makes sense. And the male main character is just constantly thinking about her. So the focus of this book is really those two and their dynamic, even in instances where they're not together or they haven't met in a while. But there's just little things about him and his mindset, mainly because he's a prince and he comes from such a level of privilege. I didn't quite enjoy him. So I was really unsure what I wanted to do about this book and whether I was truly enjoying it, because yes, I love the writing, yes, I love the atmosphere, but the plot wasn't plotting. Like, we were establishing relationships with the characters and establishing where they are in their current scenario, but nothing was really progressing for the longest time. And in terms of characters, like, I wasn't super invested, like, with them being romantically linked. I didn't really care. And then we got to the last 20% of this book. We introduced a new character who I love, and the end of this was fantastic. The plot did indeed start to plot. We end on a little bit of a cliffhanger as well, and I'm very excited to see where the next book in this series goes. I ended up giving it 4 stars, really enjoyed it. It is like a low 4, a 3.5 to a 4, just because I enjoyed a lot of elements about it throughout the beginning, but I wasn't sold, I wasn't invested up until the very end of this one. Now, the problem that I have here is that you can buy book 3 in this series in the Illumicrate edition off the Illumicrate website, but I cannot find book 2 anywhere. Like, yeah, I can only buy a set of all 3 of the current published books for £150. And that's not really worth it when the only one that I need to get my hands on is book 2. So I'm going to ask around on Instagram, on Patreon, see if there's anybody willing to sell me just book 2 in this series. Because this is, like I said, it's one of my, I don't know if I did say, I said to my patrons this week that this is one of my favorite Illumicrate editions, if not actually my favorite Illumicrate edition. So if I'm enjoying the story, then it's definitely one that I want to collect the set of. So that means that in terms of this challenge, this is going to be a shelve. So we're going to head upstairs. I'm going to see what the next book I'm picking up is going to be. But before that, I am going to do a Bookopoly roll to see if we can pick a prompt that will guide us in choosing the next book for this video. This side of the board is not looking good in terms of picking a book from the shelves, because obviously when we go to the shelves, we're looking ideally for something that I may want to scrap. And this is fine. This section is fine. So if I roll low, amazing. This is going to be difficult. This is probably going to be another guaranteed shelve. It would take me a little while to work out what my most recent purchase is. If we land on chance, then I have to remake the entire deck, because I just looked at it and there's only 2 books in here that I could actually read. And they're not on the shelves. And then this takes all of the control away from me. And then we just have comic, which there's no comics up there, and community shelf. So I guess we will see what happens, but I don't know why I put the dice here. Let's put my marker there. And our second book for this episode, it's a chance. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm gonna have to remake this. You know what? I'm not. We're gonna do this differently. So in a standard deck of chance cards in a Monopoly set, there are 16 cards, and that is normally how many cards I have with my Bookopoly board. However, it has been a while since I've used my board, so the majority of the cards that I already have are not applicable anymore. So instead of making a full set of cards, which seems a little bit wasteful when we're dealing with a specific case here, like I have to pick a book off these shelves, I have just decided to use a spinner wheel. So the point of the chance cards in Bookopoly is that you have a random selection of books. Half of them are ones that you're supposed to be very excited for, and half of them are ones that you're less excited about or don't really want to read right now. So to keep the element of chance in here, I have just added every book from these 2 shelves. There's actually exactly 16 that I haven't read. So there are things like sequels, you can't see, but I have 4 Ruined Realms up here, as well as Iron Flame is in there. And then you also have the one that I do not want to come up is June by, is it Frank Herbert, the classic sci-fi? I don't want to be reading that right now, and that is in there because it is behind this first stack of books. The only one that I haven't added is Once Upon a Broken Heart by Stephanie Garber, because I know that you don't have to do this, but personally I would like to read Caraval first, so I've added Caraval, but I've left Once Upon a Broken Heart off. So I'm going to screen record and let's see what I'm going to be reading, and then hopefully this Woven Kingdom will fit in its place. It's gone past June. I am really happy with this one. It's not the right name, but I know which book it is. I am kind of worried though about fitting this Woven Kingdom on, because that's a really tight spot. So the book that's been picked is The Whispering Dark by Kelly Andrew, not The Whispering Door. But as you can see, there is a little bit of a difference in the size of these two, because Onyx Storm is also just not going to move. So if I put a couple of thicker books behind here instead. And then this Woven Kingdom should go here. A little bit of space on this shelf, but not enough to fit anything else. And then I just need to get on the 2 June CL Tan books that I've pulled from the back. I now feel like I have to bring this 3rd shelf into the mix, because I've now got it so everything on this top shelf apart from the books behind are ones that I've read, and then as it filters down, so this is, I haven't read Onyx Storm, but it's part of Fourth Wing obviously, which I have read the first book, so then my TBR starts here, and up until this point it was kind of just these 2 shelves that were organized, but I feel like now we're getting down into the 3rd shelf, so I feel like I kind of need to mix this into the alphabetization. So who goes up then? Dana, J, and K, L, and M. That is a perfect fit. I love that. I still don't think I'm gonna get both of these on here though. I hate that we have space up here. Okay. Perfect. I mean, the fit could have been better, but I think I did all right. The reason why I'm so excited to read The Whispering Dark by Kelly Andrew is the kind of books that I want right now are quicker, punchier reads, and this one on the back is described as a paranormal thriller. That is just an author blurb, so I'm taking it with a pinch of salt, but it is definitely a little bit different from what I've been picking up recently. Like I said, I want to stay away from fantasy romance at the minute because I've been reading a bunch of that, and I have just read a fantasy romance. So I'm looking for things that are maybe a bit more along the lines of a thriller to keep me hooked and compelled. But this one, based on the synopsis, seems like a dark academia. It is following a deaf girl who attends a university that teaches people, I think, to travel through parallel dimensions, and she has to make an alliance with somebody she describes as a pretentious upperclassman when one of their fellow students turns up dead, and I'm assuming that they believe that it's not natural causes. I don't know how obvious it is that it isn't natural causes, but they team up to get to the bottom of how this student died. So I'm very excited to try this one. It is from October 2022, so another 2022 Illumicrate pick actually, because this Woven Kingdom was January, and I do really like this edition. I think it has a different colorway from the original. It's pink instead of a purple. I really like the edge on it though. I love like just a solid black and white floral printed edge. Oh, and it does also have, I feel like I'm in an unboxing now, a completely custom reverse dust jacket, which I like the vibe that's going on here. So I'm gonna go get myself that coffee because it is way past coffee time for me now, and make a start on this before I get into some vlog editing for the rest of the day. It is the sleepy hours here. I've just been locked into my book for like 50 pages and I feel like I've awoken from some kind of daze. But I thought that it was a good time for me to bring you guys an update on this because I'm now 154 pages into it, which is up to chapter 21. And I am enjoying it now, but it did definitely take me like a solid 100 pages before I was remotely invested in this, because I feel like it kind of not throws you into the action, but there is very little lead up to the synopsis, and the way that it builds intrigue throughout this book is actually frustrating me a little bit because it's not making me like compelled and want to continue. It's more just perpetually confusing me, and so I'm getting more annoyed because it feels like a forced kind of intrigue, but then I'm not intrigued because I'm confused. But let's wind it back and talk about what this book actually is. I wouldn't call it a supernatural or paranormal thriller at this point. I think that it's not gripping enough to be a thriller. I am like not an expert on thrillers at all, and you will often find that if I read like mysteries and thrillers, sometimes I'll confuse them and I'll call them each other, so that is definitely not my area of expertise. But for me, a thriller has to be thrilling, and I'm not feeling thrilled by this. It is definitely an autumnal read though, I would say. If you are somebody who does read based on the seasons, you want to be picking this up in like September, October, November, because it is quite atmospheric within the writing and the language used, and it really does use a lot of description around the time of year that this starts, which is obviously autumn because it's the start of a college year, and the element of occult and strange happenings also feeds into that autumnal atmosphere. But we are following a girl who is attending this university where she has applied for a scholarship, and the way that this scholarship works is that if you succeed and pass the tests for this scholarship, then you have to agree to go wherever they see fit to put you. And the place where she is sent is this like supernatural university where they train people to open and explore rips in the universe into mirror realms. So it is set in our world. It's a contemporary fantasy. I'm pretty sure it's in Massachusetts. It's regarded amongst the rest of the world, like people think that it's not real, that these rips in the world aren't real, and that it's all kind of like photoshopped. And so there's only the people who really attend the university or work there that really believe in what is going on. But we also have the male perspective in here, who is called, not a clue actually, Colton Price, I think. And he is a senior at this university. Now this book does contain one of my favorite tropes, and you find out that it's one of my favorite tropes in chapter 2. It's the he falls first trope, and normally in a romantic leaning book that comes like a little bit later in the story. You kind of figure all that stuff out, but straight from the very first chapter, from his perspective, you know that he knows who this girl is. And when he was a kid, he almost drowned, and she found him like washed up on the side of a lake, and he recognizes her immediately. So when he sees her at this university for the first time, he says her name. Now she isn't really paying too much attention, so she doesn't quite clock on that that's what's happened, and they go along with this kind of friendship that develops without ever really addressing that. So at this point where I'm at halfway through, she still has no idea that he is the boy that she found washed up on the edge of this lake when she was a child. There are so many just like questions that I have even at this point in the synopsis at chapter 2. Like, he says in that chapter that he knows that she was going to be attending this university and that he's been told to stay away from her, but like, why does he know who she is? Like, it doesn't really go into him like what, keeping tabs on her, stalking her throughout the years. The fact that he's ordered to keep away from her, he is part of some sort of like brotherhood or cult or group, and it is very much alluded to that he is not a part of this group by choice, and every conversation that is had about whatever it is that he's a part of and the other people that are a part of it is very carefully omitting certain elements of the conversation so that you can't put together what's actually going on. And I really don't like when that is the way that tension and intrigue is built, because it's not seamless. Like, it's not omitting things in that like you don't notice that things are being omitted because other things are being said and you're not noticing like what hasn't been said. It's so obvious that things aren't being said that I'm just like confused and not getting like a real clear picture of what's going on here because of what is missing, and everything is so like ambiguously described. Like, our main female character hears voices in the dark and like the shadows, and she's scared of the dark, and sometimes she wakes up in the woods in the middle of the night, and I'm just like, but why do all of these things happen? And I do feel like that's what we're building up to. We're building up to something all coming together to explain all of the whys of this book, but I have so many whys and I'm so confused about so many small things that I don't think that the ending of this book is going to be satisfactory by my standards. But then something else that's like very confusing to me is not only do we have the fact that he's wrapped up in this group that knows something about these murders or is investigating them or something, the female main character and her roommates, the people who live in her dorm, are also having visions of these murders or are investigating these murders as well. And it's like, it's all very convenient that she just happens to be sharing a room with somebody who's having visions about these murders that this boy that she knows that she doesn't know she knows is somehow related to, and there's no whys. There's just no whys. Like, it all just is. And that's the bit that I'm struggling with. Something that's also really frustrating me is, like I said right at the beginning, in Colton's perspective, we find out that he has been explicitly told to stay away from her, which obviously we know that he knows her, but I don't know if the people who have told him to stay away from her know that he knows her. So I have no idea why he's been so explicitly told that he has to stay away from her. But the annoying thing is that he doesn't even try. Like, for the first 50 pages, they have this, like, they don't even dislike each other, because he's staying away from her because he has to, and she thinks that she's offended him, so she's like trying to make amends. But they kind of dance around each other for a little bit, and then he just makes absolutely no effort, and he's pulled up multiple times, and it's like, no, you have to stay away from her. He's threatened about having to stay away from her. He doesn't even attempt it. He does not even attempt it. There is one scene, and this is very mild spoilers, so don't worry. Like, it's nothing like super dramatic that I'm going to spoil for you, but there's essentially like this scene where he is once again reminded that he has to stay away from this girl, and there will be dire consequences if he doesn't. And then the next scene we see him in is he's a teaching assistant, so it's like where they're in the same class. So fine, okay. The next scene after that we see him in, he's complaining that she hasn't been to his house recently. He's literally just been threatened and told that he has to stay away from her. And the very next conversation that he has outside of his role as a teaching assistant is complaining that she has not been to his house. I'm like, dude, you're not even making an attempt here. That being said, since I've got past the 100-page mark, I've gotten into it a little bit more. The language is quite atmospheric, quite descriptive. I wouldn't necessarily call it flowery, but it is kind of leaning that way. It is quite descriptive, especially around like the atmosphere, the weather, the setting, and that kind of thing. It's not my favorite though. Like, I'm finding it quite, not difficult to read in any way, but it's not pulling me in. Like, I'm not absorbed when I'm reading it. It isn't transportative in that way. The plot is still like, we're finding out little bits as we go on. It's still not making any sense to me in terms of a whole. Like, I still definitely feel like I need a lot more, but I think maybe the rapport between the characters has drawn me in a little bit, because I think when I was struggling to settle into the writing style, or it was taking me longer than I like to settle into the writing style, I was then not really drawn into this kind of like banter that they have with each other, and also the seemingly magnetic pull between them. But now that I've broke the page 100 mark, I feel like I'm a little bit more comfortable in that regard and enjoying it a little bit more. So I'm glad, because I was wondering at around page 80-90 whether I was going to be making it through this book, and the jury's still out, because if I read another 100 pages and I don't feel like it's improved, maybe I'll feel differently. But at this point, after what I've just read, I'm feeling a little bit more grounded in the story, which is definitely good. I am on my way to bed, but before I forget, I wanted to update you guys and let you know that I did ask on Instagram if anybody had a copy of, is it These Infinite Threads, that they were not super invested in, and one very generous soul has very kindly sold me their copy of the book. So I do have the sequel to this Woven Kingdom headed my way. And then, because I struggled obviously to get hold of a copy of book 2, I also ordered book 3 off the Illumicrate website. So I mean, it's not great in terms of books hauled, not when I've already hauled 10 books in March. So for April we're looking at a 10 book Shelve It or Scrap It when I already have a lot going on in March. I think I'm gonna try and find a way to make it a little bit easier for myself, but it won't be by much. So I think, well, I'm definitely going to leave those 2 books when they arrive boxed up, and I'll just put them in my March unboxing, which are the books that I hauled in April. So I only have to read them for Shelve It or Scrap It in May. But still, like, we've made it 3 months and this challenge has been manageable. I am struggling a little bit with not buying sequels. Like, I read a Piper CJ book at the beginning of the year, at the end of last year. I think it was in January, although it was a Patreon pick from the end of last year, and oops, my little doof is falling off. I really, really want the sequel, and I won't buy an ebook of it. I want the physical copy, because I do haul ebooks as well. Very occasionally, I don't really buy them. I normally read them on Everand or Kindle Unlimited. But if I haul ebooks, I don't count them towards the books that I have to read read for Shelve It or Scrap It, I just don't register that I've hauled them because they're not taking up physical space. And because I don't buy a lot of them, it's not like it's a spending issue or anything. But I don't want an ebook copy of it. I want the physical copy, but I won't buy it because if I buy it, that means that I have to compensate for it in Shelve It or Scrap It. So I actually made it 3 months with very manageable hauls, meaning we have very manageable episodes of Shelve It or Scrap It, but that is definitely going to be changing next month, and I'm just trying to keep my fingers crossed that it's going to be more manageable in May again. It is definitely working though, in terms of not only are we seeing like a constant steady decrease in the amount in stacks month on month, but it is definitely making me second guess whether I'm buying books, even books that I technically need, that I plan on reading very soon. I don't want to buy them. I'm leaving it till the last minute because I don't want to be held accountable for my own actions. I have just spent all day on sprints with my patrons where I have finished The Whispering Dark by Kelly Andrew, and guys, I loved this book so much. I am shocked, honestly. I have flipped the dust jacket round on this as well. This is the inside dust jacket art, in case you were wondering why you don't recognize the cover. But I honestly did not expect this to sweep me away like it did. And some of the stuff that I was talking to you guys about yesterday definitely still stands. There are definitely still criticisms I have of this. There are tons of questions that I have throughout this that were unanswered. The magic in here is a little bit more intangible, a little bit more ambiguous than I typically like, and the plot is not whimsical. Whimsical is not the word, but it's not like a solid everything has an answer, everything wraps up nicely kind of plot. And while there are reasons for things regarding the magic in here, things happen for a reason, there are elements of this magic that exist simply because they do that I felt like I would have liked a lot more depth on. Those are pretty much my main issues that I had with it. But considering I did not want to read a fantasy romance going into this, and I keep saying before every roll, like, I just don't want to read fantasy romance right now, I adored the romance in here. I do not know what genre I would put this book into at this point. I have, for the sake of my spreadsheet, categorized it as fantasy because there are fantastical elements. It reminds me a lot actually of something like Vicious by V.U. Schwab, but also a little bit like The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, mixed with something like The Devouring Grey by Christine Lynn Herman. But while it is definitely, I would say, solidly a fantasy, like you 100% can call it a fantasy, it also has a lot of elements of horror, but horror doesn't seem like a perfect fit for it. I wouldn't call it a thriller because I don't feel like the pace and the tone is compelling enough. Like, it's a much slower read than I associate with a thriller. I wouldn't call it a straight up romance because there's definitely more going on here, even though romance is a very strong theme. Romantasy and fantasy romance doesn't feel right for it either. So I have gone with fantasy, but it does have a lot of elements of a lot of different genres. The main kind of theme that we tackle in here, because I went into this knowing very little about it, aside from that it was set at a university that deals with slipping between the cracks in worlds, but I would say that the main fantastical thing that we're focusing on is an element of possession. Things like demons, which is why I feel like paranormal or horror is like a pretty good fit for this book as well. And throughout it all, we have this like romance that is full of like longing and pining. The male main character in here, Colton Price, I'm a sucker for a sad broken boy, and he is the poster child for sad broken boys. I am a sucker for the he falls first trope, and this also has an edge of like a gothic atmosphere to it. I have said this before, but a underrated subgenre of fantasy for me that I really enjoy but never really think about or reach for or actively seek out is things that concern the occult, especially where that intersects with like universities. I have still not read, oh my god, what is that book called? I can see it in my head. I know the name of the sequel. Why is it showing me every book apart from this one? Because I've put the author's name in. Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. I still have not read that book. I read the first 50 pages when I first got it, and then I was preoccupied and had to pick up another book for a book club or something, so I never continued. But Setting wise, it felt pretty similar in the beginning to Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo, and that once again is a like dark academia university story that deals in the occult. There's also The Ravens by, I think, is it Danielle Page and Donielle Clayton, which is a like sorority of witches that I really enjoyed as well for that atmosphere. I did start The Diviners on audio, but I wanted to kind of tandem read it, so I also didn't finish that. But I also really like The Diviners, The Devouring Grey by Christine Lynn Herman, All of Us Villains by Christine Lynn Herman and Amanda Foody. It had a little bit of all of those books, so I feel like that is definitely why plot-wise it was a win for me. Even though I had slight issues with the writing, I had slight issues with the way the atmosphere was being crafted early on, I felt was quite jarring. But when you pair that like lush, moody atmosphere with this romance that's just like full of pining and tension, 100% a hit for me. So I did give this 4 stars. There were elements of it that felt like a 5, but I do, thinking back on it, like there's so much about it that I wish was done a little bit differently in terms of the world and in terms of the plot, that I don't feel like 5 stars is a perfect rating for this. That being said, we are definitely going to be shelving this, which is why I flipped the dust jacket over. It really annoyingly though, the cover isn't centered, and I bent it along the pre-creased creases folds is the word I was looking for, from the dust jacket being the right way around, so it should be right, and the spine is fine. The back is lined up correctly. It's literally just the front, which is really annoying. But I don't think actually in Shelve It or Scrap It history that I have ever had 2 shelves back to back. We normally try and, well, the point is to try and follow a shelf with a scrap. But in this case, that has not happened, even though I had no choice over what books I was reading. So once again, we're going to go back to the Bookopoly board. We're going to find ourselves a prompt, and we are going to use that prompt to figure out what I'm reading next. In terms of what we have coming up, the only things that I'm really looking to avoid is the comic and the manga space, just because at this point in Shelve It or Scrap It, it would be difficult to make that happen. Anything else I think I'm fine with, although if I could choose the book, like have even a little bit of choice in what I read, that would be nice. Okay, that's 11. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Are you kidding me? Are you actually kidding me? What the fuck? Here we are again in exactly the same place doing exactly the same thing. Luckily, I still have the wheel open in my phone because I never close my internet tabs. And all I had to do was take off the Whispering Dark, and in its place, I added the Space Between Worlds. Now I managed to get away with not reading the one book off this list that I really do not want to read. So hopefully, fingers crossed, I can manage again. But let us see what book I'm going to be reading for our second chance card roll of this video. Scared. It's gone past June again. This isn't terrible, I just would rather not have read it right now. And that one is To Gaze Upon Wicked Gods by Molly X. Chang. So let's get the Whispering Dark onto the shelves. This is gonna be a problem. A problem. This one you can't quite see, but it is going right at the top here. To Gaze Upon Wicked Gods was actually on a list of potential books for me to read in April because I'm going to China. So I made a list of Chinese authors to kind of narrow down the books that I was going to take with me. It doesn't matter though that I'm reading this now because I have 15 to 20 other authors in that list, and I'm not going to read 15 to 20 books in 2 weeks. But from what I remember about this one, it is about a girl who is from a country that has been colonized by Rome, and she has a death magic that the Prince of Rome, I think he's like the second prince, which makes him, I guess, the second youngest, maybe? I don't know how that works. But he asks her to become his assassin to assassinate political rivals that he says will be beneficial to both of their nations. And she agrees to protect the people that she loves the most, but she has to kind of confront, as she's growing closer to this prince, like personally, like becoming personally attached to him, as well as assassinating people for him and for this enemy country. She has to kind of face whether the work that she is doing to protect the people that she loves the most is harming her country and harming her people. In terms of the synopsis, it sounds really interesting and something that I would enjoy. It is actually, I feel like it looks chunkier than this, but it's actually less than 350 pages, which is surprising. It feels like it doesn't look huge, but for a fantasy book, I did think it'd be a little bit longer than that. So last night I read about 100 pages of this, and I've now made it 135 pages through To Gaze Upon Wicked Gods. And I meant to give you a little bit of a check-in this morning before my entire day was really derailed. But I'm here now to let you know a little bit of information about this one and how I'm feeling about it so far. We are following a young woman called Ru Ying, who is living in a country that is being occupied by Rome. This is a fantastical, as far as I can tell, it's a fantastical world. There is actually a portal in the sky, which they haven't gone into yet this far into the book, but apparently that is what Rome came through. So this is inspired, it says at the author's note in the beginning, this is inspired by the stories that the author's grandfather used to tell her from when he lived in a certain area of China that was occupied, I think during World War II, by Russia and Japan, and like the atrocities that happened there at that time. And the people of this area have kind of turned these very real stories into almost folklore that has been passed down through generations, and that is what inspired this story. So something that I find incredibly interesting about it, in terms of like, I don't understand why this is the case, is that it is set in a fantastical world, a fantastical country, but the oppressor in here is Rome, which obviously, like, Rome is a real place and the Roman Empire was a real thing, and yet in terms of the real life event that this was inspired by, Rome were not the oppressor. Like, the Roman Empire was not the oppressor in this instance. So I would be interested to kind of know why Molly X Chang decided to make it fantastical with this real world influence, but then the real world influence is not actually what it would have been at the actual time. So it's kind of like The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang, where it is inspired by this horrendous real life event that happened. But the main character lives in this occupied country, and it's all she's ever known because it happened before she was born. She very much sees that her people are being oppressed though, like she's under no illusion about that. And all she cares about is her family. So her mother and her father have died, and she lives with her grandmother and her twin sister, who is addicted to a substance called opium, which is of course opium. And very similar to what happened like in our real world history, the Roman occupiers came in and they kind of flooded this country with opium to make the inhabitants, the citizens of this place, more pliable and also more beholden to them, because if they could continue to supply them with opium, then they would have to continue going back to the Romans and doing whatever it was that they wanted them to do. So the main character's sister is addicted to opium, and so she spends a lot of time trying to acquire this drug for her sister, while also trying to get her to break her addiction and help her through her withdrawal. She also has a very powerful gift in that she can kill people, she can drain the life force from them, and the magic in this world has been dying over generations. So the Romans raid her sector of the city where she lives, and they take her into custody, and they're testing people for gifts, testing like what their gifts are, and if the Romans perceive them to be useful, then I guess they're trading them into an army, and if not, they kill them. So the main character has a very, very rare gift, and the second prince, who I think is called Antony, decides that he would like to train her as an assassin to eliminate his political rivals for the good of both of their realms. The main character is very aware that this is not a good thing for her to do. She's very aware that this makes her a traitor to her country, but at this point, people are falling into two categories. There's the people who are not really doing anything, just trying to live their lives. Then you also have the rebels who are trying to fight back against the Roman Empire and are just dying horrific deaths. And then you also have the people who are submitting to and aiding the Roman Empire, and they are being afforded luxuries and rights that they should already be entitled to, but because this is a country or a city under occupation, they are not. And so she decides to keep her sister alive, to keep her grandmother alive, and to ease the suffering of her family, that she will be the assassin for this prince, even though she knows that by doing that, she's going against her people. The way that I explained it to you guys then actually made me more interested in this than I actually am. And the thing that I'm really struggling with is the writing. The story so far at this point that I'm at is pretty like meh. Like I don't have any strong opinions on the story, but the way that it is being delivered, I don't love. I don't love it. And I mean, I've just read this Woven Kingdom, which also notice this is another Illumicrate book. That's 3 for 3 Illumicrate books so far. But this Woven Kingdom, I also didn't really think much about the characters or the plot for the longest time, but I enjoyed the writing style, so I didn't mind reading it, even though not a lot was happening. And in this one, like, things are happening. I'm at the point now, like just over 100 pages in, where she has kind of met the prince and the ball is actually rolling on the plot. But I just really don't like the writing style. It's the kind of style where like it kind of feels overly dramatic, and this is something that really annoys me when pretty much every third word is an adjective or an adverb. So it's like, I carelessly stumbled across the dusty ground and threw open the glittering marble doors with my pale, long-fingered hands and steadily ran across the glittering tile. Like, everything has a descriptor before it. It reminds me of badly written YA, like that kind of writing style. Like, we're trying to accentuate every single word in this sentence to really make you feel how dramatic and poignant everything is, and I just find it incredibly tiresome. There is quite a bit of repetition in here as well. The family that this girl comes from is an important one, or it was an important family before the occupation, where her grandfather was this decorated general, but her grandmother was the strategist that made her grandfather successful. But because it's a patriarchal society, nobody knows about her grandmother and how clever and like successful she was. And it reminds you, like, so many times it'll be like, my grandfather was famous because my grandmother was a strategist, and somebody will say she's clever and she's like, well, they don't know that my grandmother was this like incredible military strategist. And it's just a little bit frustrating. So I really struggled through the first 50 pages of this, and then I read the second 50 pages and I was like, okay, I am moving past the fact that I don't really like the writing style right now. And honestly, to be really honest, I have had a horrendous day today and I do not want to read this book. Like, I was kind of committed to pushing through it for quite a bit longer, and after the second 50 pages weren't too difficult for me to get through, I was like, no, okay, like I can read this, I can see if like the plot entices me at all. 135 pages in, still not feeling it, and after having like a horrible day, picking up this book is just not something that I'm interested in. I'm reading it for the sake of reading it. There's nothing I'm really enjoying about it, if I'm being honest. It is reminding me a little bit more of The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang, like I said. That's actually a book that I really don't like as well. They're different, like thematically they're quite similar, but there are like a lot of differences between them. It's mainly the inspiration and the kind of state of the country that is reminding me of The Poppy War, but it hasn't gripped me, and I'm not really enjoying myself enough to invest my time anymore. And then also because I've had a bad day, like I have a bit less patience than I sometimes do have. So sadly this one is going to be a DNF. I am quite sad about it though, because I really like this naked hardcover. It's always the prettiest naked hardcovers are the ones that I want to love, and I don't. I'm thinking of Mistress of Lies, which once again was an Illumicrate book, which had one of the nicest underdust jacket things that I've ever seen, and I just really did not like that book. So yeah, this one sadly is going to be a DNF, which means it's going to be a scrap, which means that we get to go back to the stacks after we've got our fourth prompt for this video. So the good news is that there is no chance space until here, so at least I can't land on chance. But roll number 4 is a 9, 6, 7, 8, 9, a science fiction. Okay, I can work with this. So let's see what we have for sci-fi. I put this on my self-destructing books for this year, and I don't know whether it's sci-fi or fantasy. I thought it was sci-fi, but then when I actually read the synopsis, maybe it's fantasy. I also put The Principle of Moments by Esme Jakimi Pearson on my self-destructing books. That one is definitely sci-fi. We have The Last Hour Between Worlds by Melissa Caruso. I think that one is science fiction. Can't remember whether The City of Nightmares by Rebecca Schaeffer, whether that's sci-fi or fantasy. It's right at the bottom, you guys can't even see it, but I think it's fantasy, but I think it has dinosaurs in it, which made me think it maybe had a time travel element, but I don't think it actually does. Is Watermoon sci-fi or fantasy? I think fantasy for that one. I actually don't have a ton of sci-fi in here. Oh, I do have A Thousand Pieces of You by Claudia Gray. So the question now is, do I want a shelve or do I want a scrap? Like in terms of predictions, like what am I in the mood for? Something that I want to potentially read because I don't think I'm gonna like it, or do I want to actually have a good time? I think I'm torn between A Thousand Pieces of You and also The Last Hour Between Worlds by Melissa Caruso. I feel like I am definitely putting this one off because I've had it for so long and I haven't read it. And I said this, I'm sure it came up at some point in Shelve It or Scrap It and I ended up switching it and picking something else. But I'm worried that I would have enjoyed this if I read it a long time ago when I first got it in like 2016, 17, 15 is when I got this book. I'm worried that I would have loved it if I read it then and then I kind of left it too late. Let me just get them both down. So this one would be another Illumicrate book, and this one's from November 2024. I knew that it was pretty recent. This one says a star investigator and her rival journey through layers of reality to save the world as they know it in this whip-smart adventure fantasy. Packed full of reality-bending magic, sapphic romance, and tantalizing mystery. Okay, maybe it isn't a sci-fi. So this is disqualified because it has elements like traveling through realities that could either be sci-fi or fantasy, but considering it literally says in the synopsis adventure fantasy, I'm gonna take it at its word and disqualify it. I actually genuinely can't believe I have so little science fiction in here, which pretty much means that I am probably going to be reading A Thousand Pieces of You by Claudia Gray. This one is definitely a sci-fi. It's about somebody who has parents that are physicists, and it's a YA, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, it's published by Harper Teen. Her mother's latest invention is called the Firebird, which allows people to leap into alternate dimensions. And when her father is murdered, she thinks that his star student is responsible, and so she starts hopping through realities trying to find him because she believes that he is responsible for her father's death. This was quite hyped at the time that it was published. I remember it being on Bookstagram back in the day, which was why I wanted it. And then I think I got it probably like a year or two after it had been published. And it's one of those books where like I've assumed that I'm going to enjoy it, and so I just haven't read it because I do that. And then now at this point I'm worried that I've missed the boat on it a little bit. So we'll give it a go. I hope I like it. I hope I haven't outgrown it. It's 357 pages, and I don't think, based on the synopsis, it seems like something that should be quite punchy and engaging and like compelling to read, which I do think is something that I would really like right now. I can't remember if I told you guys that I'm doing a 24-hour readathon with my patrons that started this evening, but in case I didn't, that is what I've been doing. That is where I've been, and I've just gotten off sprints where I was reading A Thousand Pieces of You by Claudia Gray. So as I predicted, this is definitely a quick read, and I think part of the reason for that is that it kind of just starts right in the thick of it. So this is the story of a girl whose father has been murdered, and she believes that his star student, who I think is like his research assistant, is responsible for his death. So he has stolen a Firebird, which is this device that allows them to transport through dimensions that her mother has invented, and he's taken it and he's fled through realities. So the main character, along with another one of her parents' research assistants, follows this guy through dimensions so that they can kill him in revenge for her father's death. However, as they start to chase this guy and catch up with him, they realize that maybe this whole thing isn't as clear-cut as they thought and could potentially hint at a larger conspiracy, although I do also have my own theories about elements that are in play here as well. It starts as she enters like her first dimension, so we don't have any lead up, we don't see the death of her father. It literally starts with her entering into this new reality and getting accustomed to it, getting accustomed to the setting, like what is potentially different from the reality she's used to, and this body that is hers but isn't hers, and this like what life looks like in this reality, while we're also establishing what happened with her father, what we're doing here, and why. From then on, like, it is quite fast paced, paced. Like, it spends a decent amount of time in dimensions. Like, I'm only in the second one now and I'm 192 pages into this. So you spend a lot of time in each reality, which I really like, because the reason why I'm drawn to books like this is because I want to know the nitty gritty of like what's different and how that affects the main character who's still the same person, because the bounds of this device is that you have to jump into your body. So it has to be you with your specific DNA code for you to be able to enter that reality. And there's also this theory of fate and the same groups of people being constantly drawn to each other that we also have at play here. So this was published in 2014 and it definitely reads like a 2014 YA, which isn't a bad thing because that is what it is. And I'm actually really enjoying the fact that this is a true young adult book. I feel like over the years, young adult just seems to be aimed at constantly older and older readers, when I do really feel like we should be utilizing the new adult age range instead of just kind of pushing teenagers out of young adult. But this, I would say, even though the main character is 18, I feel like she reads like quite a young 18. There's things thrown in here casually like clubbing, which isn't unusual for books like that I was reading in the early 2000s. I never know when to say I was a teenager because it was the 2000s, but it was also like kind of going into the 2010s, like right at the end of the 2000s. I feel like when I say 2000s, like people think like 2002. It's like, no, I was 9 then. It's a little bit later on, but that kind of content was in those books as well. So I would say that the age range for this like is anything from like 14 up to 19. And I think the paciness of this really leans into that as well. And we also have an 18-year-old character that is really focused on her family. Now, I am actually assuming that she's 18 because I don't think it's ever explicitly said, but just that element, like part of this was set in England and there was the clubbing thing. The parental situation she's in this instance is not one that would necessarily stop her from clubbing under 18. I mean, I know that I was. So that's kind of just what I've assumed, but I feel like it does solidly read a little bit younger. But with that comes not necessarily criticisms, but just observations that I have. And I'm very aware that I'm speaking of this less critically than I would if this was published in 2025. But something that stands out to me from the very beginning of this is I feel like I know the plot twist, and I don't know for sure yet because the plot twist hasn't come into fruition, but I just feel like there's some things that are glaringly obvious from the beginning of this. And I don't feel like it's a spoiler to say that I very much feel like they're chasing the wrong guy, and it has been obvious to me from the get-go, and I very much feel like I know what the twist is that's going to be coming. But I mean, like I said, I don't know. And the love interest in here is very much giving me the ick. Like, I am not a fan. He creeps me out. At this point, I don't really know if he's supposed to though, and I do feel like this is something that I would have been eaten up if I'd have read it closer to its publication, because my main worry with this is that I felt like I'd potentially missed the boat, that I should have read it like nearly 10 years ago when I first hauled it, instead of just leaving it and leaving it and leaving it until like publishing of fiction has come such a long way in like the last decade, and I've obviously aged 10 years in the last decade. So I feel like right now my thoughts are that I'm really enjoying it. I love the alternate realities, the skipping through dimensions. There's some parts of it that, like the reality that we're currently in, I don't love. So there's some parts of it that I'm not super vibing with, but then it's because it's so fast paced, like none of these things we're really dwelling on too much, so that it's really making me dislike this book. So at this point I can say that I'm 100% going to finish this. There's nothing about this that is making me think that I want to DNF it. I'm having a great time when I'm reading it. The question is going to be, I think, is whether I end up enjoying this book enough to shelve it. I do feel like me kind of aging out of this book was a very valid concern, and that is sad because I do see lots of elements that younger me would have loved and like kind of missed out on, which will maybe make this series a scrap, whereas a decade ago it would have been something that I shelved. But I've got like 160 pages left, so still a ways to go, but it's not going to take me very long, so I guess we'll find out the answers to my questions very soon. My 24-hour readathon is still going strong, and I have just finished 1,000 Pieces of You by Claudia Gray, which I very much enjoyed. This is almost a sci-fi thriller because it's so fun, it's so fast-paced, but we are also essentially chasing, the plot of this is that we're chasing a murderer and also unraveling a conspiracy along the way. play. So I really liked that this kept me hooked with the mystery throughout, even though I did feel like the plot twists were a little obvious and they did play out kind of the way that I guessed. It was a little bit different than the way that I thought it was going to play out, but it very much kind of went along the lines that I thought that it was going to. But it definitely kept me hooked the entire way through this. There were moments where I had to suspend my disbelief. There were moments of convenience throughout here, and I did overlook them a bit, but I feel like some elements were a little bit surface level and could have gone a little bit deeper. But for a like 2014 young adult sci-fi with this really fast pacing and punchy plot, I understand why their convenience is, why it's like honestly just not that deep. There was a little bit of a romance in here as well. We have a love triangle, and I personally just really did not believe this triangle. And I mean, I do like a love triangle because I'm so familiar with it back in the day, and there's just one element of this triangle that I wasn't feeling. I was suspicious about it from the get-go. And if we're being honest, I mean, every love triangle that I've read from these types of books have a very obvious choice and a not obvious choice, so it was very in keeping with the time in that regard. Like, we always knew that Bella wasn't going to choose Jacob, and we always knew who Katniss was going to be choosing in the Hunger Games. But I actually diverted from telling you the Hunger Games one in case it's a spoiler. I don't think it is at this point, but anyway, there was just one in here that I completely disregarded because they were just fishy from the get-go for me. And I do feel like, especially with the way this played out with some of the romantic elements in the end, I feel like if I had have read this 10 years ago, I would be eating this up, and I can 100% see why this was such a hyped and beloved series back in 2014, 2015, 2016. These covers were honestly like some of the most beautiful things I'd ever seen when this was all over Instagram, and I do actually still really like them now. And having read the book, they have so much more significance. Like, the cover has more significance to... Excuse you. The cover has so much more significance than it did like kind of at first glance. I am really glad that I read this. I am sad that I put this off for so long. This is one of the reasons why I'm actually trying to get control of my TBR and the books that I own, because it is unrealistic for me to even think about getting to this point right now. But I would love to get to the point where I have less than 100 unread books and I can go out and buy books and keep on top of new releases and pick up things and read them within like the couple of months that I've bought them. That's like kind of the dream, because of books like this that I feel like I would have given 4 or 5 stars to if I'd have read them when I was excited about reading them. And I do still think that this is really good, but I think for me it could have been so much better if I'd have read it at a different time in my life. So the way that I feel about this right now is kind of split down the middle. There is so much that I enjoyed about it, and I would actually love to read more books in this series. I had a really good time, but realistically I do not think that I'm going to actively pursue continuing this series, especially because I don't own books 2 and 3. And honestly, for me, I have an issue with object permanence, like out of sight, out of mind. So if I don't own the sequels, it is actually unlikely, given everything else that I have to read, that I'm going to pursue this series anytime soon. I gave it 3 stars. It was like a 3.5, like a high 3, because I did have such a good time with it. But I think I'm going to be scrapping this one. I'm not DNFing the series, but if it gets to a point where 1 to 2 years have passed and I haven't even thought of picking up the sequels, then I will unfortunately be DNFing the series as a whole. And this is one actually where I feel like it would be much more beneficial for me to read the sequels soon because of how fast paced this story was, because it's one that I'm gonna forget about the details of within a few months. So time is of the essence. Realistically, I don't think that I'm going to be prioritizing this anytime soon, even though I had a really good time with it, and I'm sure I would have a good time with books 2 and 3. I know the audiobooks are available on Everand. This was also on KU, but only book 1, unfortunately. So I read this one on my Kindle, but they don't have books 2 or 3. I do think that I would be able to get the ebooks on Libby if I wanted to continue, so I can carry on with this series inexpensively. But whether I choose to prioritize it, I do think that's unlikely. So I am going to be scrapping this one. I'm sad about this. Like, we talked in the last episode about how when things things have been on my shelves for so long, they become more significant to me because I feel like they've always been there. This has been on my shelf for such a long time. I don't feel too bad about unhauling a book that I didn't like that I bought 2-3 months ago because it's a relatively new addition to my collection, but this guy's been with me for a long time. And so I do feel a little bit sad to let go of it, but if I'm being honest with myself, I didn't enjoy it enough for it to warrant a space on my shelf right now. And even thinking about that has me questioning myself. Maybe we'll revisit it by the end of the episode, but right now I'm comfortable letting this one go. So roll number 5, I am pretty comfortable with anything that we have that could be coming up, I think. Apart from this, I don't need another chance card in this game. So roll number 5, fingers crossed, is, I'm just gonna re-roll this one. That is 10. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Other. So this is actually, I think, the last square that we landed on for the last game that we played. So other is pretty much any genre that is not represented on the board. So we're looking for like historical fiction, literary fiction, thrillers, horrors, that kind of thing. And I know our choices are going to be limited because, I mean, fantasy, romance, sci-fi is predominantly what I read. But having a look, let's see what our options are. I'll just tip you down a bit. We have Bats of the Republic by Zachary Thomas Dodson. I honestly don't know what the genre of this is. It's like sci-fi or historical fiction or something, but I don't know like specifically what it would be classed as. And then our only other options, I think, are over in this end stack where we have 2 thrillers, which is All the Dangerous Things by Stacey Willingham and The Lies I Tell by Julie Clark. So I think based on my mood right now and what I keep saying about what I want to read, it's going to be one of these 2. So I keep telling you guys that I want to read something that's fast, that's punchy, that's compelling, and I don't want to read fantasy romance. And with the exception of, actually no, I was going to say with the exception of the last book, A Thousand Pieces of You, everything has had a romantic component, but that also had a romance, like a very strong romantic presence. It's just that it was sci-fi instead of fantasy, and all of the other stuff I'd read for this vlog is fantasy. So I'm finally getting my wish because I'm pretty sure we are not going to have a romance in either of these, and it is fast, it's punchy, it's compelling. They're thrillers. Now I don't know which one to read. I've read a book by Stacey Willingham before and I really enjoyed it. I did listen to the audiobook though, so I don't know whether to save this one for the next time I want an audiobook, because I am already listening to an audio now of a horror, so it's not like I'm in the market for an audio, so I feel like I should save this for a time that I am. Or I don't know whether to go for The Lies I Tell by Julie Clark, which I don't know anything about. The Book of the Month thrillers are from when I was working with Book of the Month, and it was just a great way for me to get thrillers because I hear really good things about Book of the Month's thriller selection, and I'm somebody who likes to read thrillers, but I'm not super invested in what they're about because I'm in it for the experience as opposed to really caring about the plot. And whichever one of these I pick as well, they're pretty much going to be guaranteed scraps because I don't often keep thrillers after I've read them. The joy for me is the reading experience, and after that I have no need to keep them when I'm done, with very, very few exceptions. Another option though actually is that I could pick this, listen to the audiobook, and I could also roll again for our final roll and pick a book to read physically, and then I can have an audiobook and a physical read. But then I already have an audiobook that I'm reading alongside physical books, and I'm really enjoying the book I'm reading. It's The September House. I cannot remember the author's name right now, but it's a horror. Realistically, I actually should be prioritizing books for various projects I'm working on, but I don't want to pause The September House because I'm enjoying it so much. With that in mind, I think I'm gonna, I don't know. I think I might go for The Lies I Tell because I don't think I need to pick up an audiobook now and read a physical alongside. I think that's just me being a little bit extra and eager to roll again. So I think I'm gonna go with The Lies I Tell and then potentially save this for a time when an audiobook would actually be really helpful to me. This one is, they're both quite short. This one is 290 pages, so it's less than 300 actually. And this one says that it is a domestic thriller. It is about a woman who is a con artist, and she essentially appears in people's lives pretends to be or says that she is exactly who they want her to be, and she leaves them with nothing. So this book in particular is following a woman who's been waiting 10 years to get her revenge on this con artist, but when they kind of meet again and they grow closer, the woman who's aiming to get her revenge finds out who the con artist target really is and maybe starts to change her opinion about her. I mean, sounds good. Like I said, I don't really care what thrillers are about. I'm just in it for the twists and turns, and as long as it provides that, then it's all good with me. I'm prepping the veg for a pork roast, but I thought while I did that I could talk to you guys a little bit about The Lies I Tell by Julie Clark, because I'm now 100 pages into it. I've always wanted to like mix and match things like this because I do cook so much. If you watch my regular weekly reading vlogs, you'll know that I cook a lot. I make homemade food like every day. I love cooking, and I also bake a lot. And I was like, you know what, when I'm cutting veg and stuff, I could technically update the vlog as well, but I genuinely do not trust my ability to be able to do more than one thing at once. So we'll see how this goes. But I'm like a third of the way through this book, and it is a thriller, so I'm quite conscious that I'm like not going to tell you very much about it. And honestly, I don't have the most to talk to you guys about, really. Even 100 pages in, it is set in more than one timeline. I know that for sure. And I don't know how many though, because we start off in the present day where this journalist has kind of orchestrated for this woman to come back into her life because something happened 10 years previous that this journalist perceives to have ruined her life, and she holds this woman responsible. That is a little bit too much potato. That'll do, I'll just leave one. So there's only a couple of chapters at the beginning of the book that are in this present day timeline. This woman who's come back into town, it seems like she's potentially trying to get revenge on a man who ruined her mother's life, and so she's using her real name in this environment where typically she changes her name throughout the years. And then very quickly we go 10 years into the past where this journalist encounters this woman for the first time, and we find out that the reason that this, or the way that this woman came on this journalist's radar, is that she was responsible for exposing a teacher who was having affairs with his students. So content warnings in here 100% for sexual assault, sexual abuse, grooming, all of that kind of stuff. And the reporter is tasked with finding out more information about this particular case, but she is just hooked on the woman who exposed the case when her boss is telling her to dig for details on the man. So we're alternating perspectives between the woman in the past 10 years ago, how she is manufacturing this relationship. Like, she essentially is very poor, her mother has died, and she is living in the back of her van, and so she starts this relationship. Like, she specifically seeks out this man, which was one of her teachers when she was in high school, and she finagles herself into a position to strike up a conversation with him. She never discloses that she was once one of his students, and she's changed a lot so he doesn't notice, and she manipulates him into a relationship with her so that she can exploit him, take his money, take his safe place to live, and eventually kind of disappear. So we're following her as she's doing that, and we're also following this journalist as she is digging into this case but keeps getting hung up on Meg Williams and trying to figure out like what part she has played in this case and whether she is actually a con artist, even though her boss keeps telling her not to bother pursuing it because it's not what he's interested in reporting on. So that is pretty much the bare bones. I think I'm at the point where I know why this woman is wanting revenge on the con artist, like what it was that happened, but I feel like that is still developing, and I'm having a good time with it. I wasn't super hooked at the beginning, but I think like it was just taking me a little while to ease into a new book. But now I'm into it, I'm very compelled. The chapters are like, some of them are 10 to 20 pages, which I consider quite long for a thriller, but I'm definitely absorbed, and I'm so glad that I'm reading a thriller right now, actually, because like I've been saying, it is exactly what I have needed. Bree's going a little bit crazy down here because she loves carrots, but I bought extra carrots so that I can give her a full one. But yeah, so far so good. I don't have anything to report. Like I said yesterday, my enjoyment in thrillers is in the reading of them because I'm so compelled and I'm so hooked, and I read quite a bit without really noticing how much I've read because I'm so absorbed. So I never really have like super concrete exciting thoughts on them. I'm just here for the ride, and so far the ride is enjoyable. So at this point I'm 95% sure that I will be finishing this book at least, but it's doing nothing nothing so different or exciting right now that I feel like it will be an exception to any other thriller and make me want to keep it when I'm done. I finished The Lies I Tell by Julie Clark and I really enjoyed it. Still, in the nature of this being a thriller, I'm not going to go into too much detail about what we have going on in here, but I will say that something about thrillers as a genre for me, and actually it's not really about the genre, it's about me as a person, is that I always go into thrillers with unrealistic expectations, which ultimately more times than not leads to them disappointing me. Essentially, I always go in expecting a thriller to be thrilling and deliver like the most salacious plot twist I've ever read in my entire life. And obviously I know that that's not all that thriller's about. Some thrillers are slower moving, like psychological thrillers. Some of them are a little bit more of a character study. Some of them, it's more about the ride and the journey and what you learn along the way than it is about any kind of plot twists. And that was definitely the case with this book, but once again, despite me knowing all of this, I still always feel just a little bit disappointed when the plot twist is not like the greatest one that I've ever read in my entire life. So I gave this one a 4, like a 3.5, 4 star. I very much enjoyed it while I was reading this. I do want to throw in an extra trigger warning in here as well for addiction, because one of the characters, like side characters in this book, is an addict, and that forms a central theme throughout this story and is referred back to quite a lot. But I definitely enjoyed the ride with this one. It took me a little while to get into it, but when I did, I was very much absorbed. While we don't have a great deal of plot twists in here, I would say it's not the twistiest thriller that I've ever read by any means. We do have some points of high tension where our main character is kind of, obviously she's befriending a con artist, so she knows that she can't trust this woman, but every time she interacts with this woman, she starts to question herself because she feels like they are building like a true connection. So when things start to go wrong in her life, her instincts, instead of leading her to believe that this con woman is responsible, is leading her to believe that the person responsible is somebody else in her life. And it's that constant like war that she has going on of like trying to figure out what it is and what's going on. And ultimately, you know, I support women's wrongs and this is a thriller about supporting women's wrongs. So yeah, I had a good time, but there was nothing in this that makes it any more exceptional than any other thriller that I've read. So given the nature of why I read them, it's because I want to be entertained in the moment. I want to be like hooked into the plot, like desperate to find out what's going to happen. This definitely achieved that for me, but I also don't feel like, and this is obviously just my personal perspective, I don't see the point in me rereading a thriller after I've read it and I already know what's going to happen, because it's obviously not going to be as gripping. So while I did really enjoy this one, I am going to be scrapping it, and we are going to be heading to the Bookopoly board to find what is hopefully going to be our final prompt for this video. So once again, we're approaching the side of the board that is not ideal for Shelve It or Scrap It. Something that I really do want to be avoiding is chance, which is quite far away, so fingers crossed I'll be able to. I don't want any more chance cards in this game. Aside from that, I don't really want to land on sequel because that's just going to be annoying, but everything else I hope should be okay. Fingers crossed. So our final roll for episode 14 of Shelve It or Scrap It is an 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Fantasy. This is wonderful. So the reason why I was actually so happy that fantasy just came up is not because I'm in the mood for a fantasy or anything, but just because it gives me so much choice. Like I would say 70-80% of the books in here are straight up fantasy. So I am going to be trying to go for one that is not fantasy romance that I'm aware of. I feel like a lot of these books do have romance plot lines in, and that is one of my favorite genres as well. But also actually, I've read a lot of good books in this vlog. I've also had a couple of shelves in this vlog. So if I could have an easy scrap, or maybe pick a book that is one that I'm very unsure about and I'm definitely testing the waters, I think that would actually be a really good idea at this point in the video, given like all of the books that's kind of come before it. So I think back in the day when I used to do Bookopoly monthly, I used to give my patrons the opportunity to vote on one of my rolls every month. And after I film this update, I'm actually going to go get a workout in, then I'll be getting a shower, making dinner, watching an episode of Silo, which if you have not watched that show, guys, 10 out of 10 would recommend. I'm obsessed. That gives me a few hours before I'm going to be picking up my next book. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to find 3 books that I'm very unsure about from the stacks, and I'm going to ask my patrons to vote. So let's select the books, I guess. One that ultimately like easily jumps out at me is Voyage of the Damned by Frances White. I have actually just filmed my self-destructing books for 2025, and all of the books that I've picked for that are from the stack, so go check that video out if you haven't already. But Voyage of the Damned is one of those self-destructing books. The reason why this is on there is because it is a murder mystery, and somebody left a comment on, I think, the last episode of Shelve It or Scrap It recently, telling me to just unhaul this outright because they didn't think that a silly, goofy murder mystery was something that I would enjoy. And honestly, I did not know that it was silly, goofy. I was already feeling very dubious because it's murder mystery, but that might be the final nail in the coffin for this book. So this is definitely one that I'm very torn about. That looks kind of good. Sorcery for Small Magics. This one I've heard really good things about. I just really don't know if it's for me. It seems like something I very much would not enjoy. This one is another self-destructing book, but this is really difficult actually. I think I've made my decision. I'm really unsure. The Phoenix Keeper is also a self-destructing book. I've heard very mediocre things about this one. It's like a cozy fantasy set in a magical zoo. That's not my vibe, but I feel like I might enjoy it because it's cute. And then I also have these two Goldsboro books. So this one I haven't really heard many people talk about, but I know it has quite a low average rating, but it is a Goldsboro book that I got from the subscription intentionally because I thought it sounded interesting. And then we have this one, which I haven't heard anybody talk about. It's one that I actually got accidentally because I forgot to skip my subscription for that month at some point in like 2023. And the thing about this is, while I didn't want it in the first place, it does have like a magic school vibe or like a assassin school or something, which is one of my favorite tropes. So I think I'm gonna go with these three as the options. I am going to let my patrons know as well that the thing that I'm looking for is like an easy scrap and see what they decide. But I'm personally hoping Voyage of the Damned, because that is the one that to me seems like the one that I'll enjoy the least. I am willing, like more than willing, for it to change my mind though. There are cases where books with a murder mystery have been books that I enjoyed. A great example I think would be Gideon the Ninth by Tamsin Muir. It's actually the fact it's a murder mystery combined with the fact it's been described as silly goofy that is now really putting me off that one. It is almost 4 hours later. My patrons have had 4 hours to vote on the poll that I left for them, and I'm back at my desk now because I have a lot of editing to do. I have a lot of work to do. I have a lot of books to read before the end of the month, so I'm doing a little bit of an evening extracurricular editing session, and I'm going to alternate between a little bit of editing and a little bit of reading to kind of kill two birds with one stone, things that I need to get done. So I need to find out what it is that I'm going to be reading. So the one that they have decided to go with, the winner, or I guess maybe the loser, depending on how you look at it, is indeed Voyage of the Damned by Frances White with 47%. My patrons know me so well. This just has one too many things that I typically don't like, so I just really do not think it's going to be a hit for me. I got this one in an Illumicrate. It's an Illumicrate edition, and Illumicrate is one of the subscription boxes that I'm a rep for. So the ones that I pay for myself, I only receive the books that I actually really want. It's only if something super special comes up that I accept them and pay for them, whereas the ones that I'm a rep for, I just receive all of them. So this is not a book that I would have picked up for myself, and I think it was actually the GSFF book from the same month. This was January last year, and I skipped the GSFF because a murder mystery on a boat, I mean, it's just not for me. And at that point, I don't think I actually knew that it was the Illumicrate book. But looking at the illustrations as well, it seems like it's going to be historical, which is another no for me most of the time, depending on the time period and the focus of the story. But generally, historical is not something that I gravitate towards. So I just feel like this is just a whole mixed bag of not for me. We'll see, of course, because like I am open to being surprised, but I just feel like it has too much going against it right now. I haven't even started this yet. I just put it down face down on my desk, and I noticed this quote on the back that says, "We can get murdered tomorrow, tonight we party." And I think I'm finally starting to understand how it's silly goofy, completely unexpected, not the vibe that I'm getting from this book at all. So I'm actually intrigued to see how this book has that tone. am a few chapters in now, and I think I'm 42 pages into this, and I'm not hating it. It has a very, very conversational writing style, and I think that my difficulty is the juxtaposition between the conversational writing style, which is a style that is most common. I mean, obviously you can apply different styles to different genres, but typically this conversational type of writing style is something that I'm more familiar with in like a young adult contemporary setting. And so when we apply it to high fantasy, there's a little bit of dissonance there for me, and this is something that is recurring through many series. Like it's not just this book. This reminds me a lot of the Chorus of Dragons series by Jen Lyons. It has that humorous, more conversational writing style with a quite complex fantasy world that is a little bit reminiscent of the Hunger Games as well. So in this one, we are following this voyage that the 12 heirs of the 12 areas of this world have to go on. So the way the magic works in this world is that there are 12 blessed, and the blessed pass on their gifts genetically. So these heirs all have the blessings of their parents, and they have to complete this voyage to take over as like the leaders of their areas. And the reason why the world reminds me of the Hunger Games is because each province is known for something. So the main character that we follow is from the fish province. They're all like animal related, and his province fishes, like they provide fish for the rest of the world to eat. And then we have, I think it said that the place where the butterflies, which are like flying bunnies, where they come from, they are responsible for, I think that they are maybe religion, because he talked about monks. There are tigers, they are the bodyguards. I think the bears are something to do with not war, I think ox might be war, but the dragons are the emperor, like the area that the emperor comes from. And that reminds me so much of the Hunger Games. It was actually really nice to see, and I'm not disliking this because there's something tickling my brain here, which is why it reminds me so much of A Chorus of Dragons. I like the world, I like the way that it's assembled. I haven't got to the bit where it's a murder mystery yet, which, as we know, is something that I generally don't like, but I do think I am going to be calling it quits here, because it is reminding me of so many series that I either do not like or have very complex feelings about, where I'm kind of like, oh yeah, like this was good, but I hated the writing style. Example is like the Scholomance series by Naomi Novik has a very, very conversational writing style. The entire thing is pretty much like a inner monologue from the main character, and she goes off on tangents, like really not randomly. She will be triggered by something to go off on a tangent, but the tangent will be pages and pages and pages of random little notes of lore on this world, so much so that you forget about what the point is by the time she eventually circles back around to what we were doing in the present day timeline. Love the world, love the plot, hate the writing style in that series. Chorus of Dragons, so many components that I love, so many elements of fantasy all mashed in there that I love in different formations in different series, but the writing style just throws me off. And I do think it is that dissonance between the serious, like complex subject matter and the fun, like comedic, light conversational tone. Also a series that I DNF'd, the Spellslinger series by Sebastian D. Castell. I didn't get far enough into that one to see how intricate the world and the plot was, but the writing style, once again, very conversational. Didn't love it. And this is giving the same energy. I genuinely don't think it's bad. Like, I was kind of getting into it a little bit, but I think what happens is that I get so distracted by the writing and how disjointed it feels to me from the subject matter and how much I want us to take these things seriously, but we're instead going to create a joke over here, that I'm like too distracted and I end up almost resenting the story, which is the case with pretty much all of those series that I just mentioned. Something that also confuses me, it's like I get distracted trying to puzzle this out instead of focusing on what's actually happening in the book, is that, like I said, the writing style to me reads very YA contemporary, and given the ages of these characters, I'm not sure how old the main character is, but like one of these heirs is 14, one's 6. Also, once again, seems 14 is very reminiscent of the Hunger Games, where you have these 12 they're not random people because they are the children of the leaders, but they're like their ages and stuff are all over the place. I'm not sure how old the main character is. I'd say he's probably around like 17, 18, 19, but the language in here, the profanity in here, it's not your casual, chill, young adult profanity. Like, there's some heavy stuff in here, and there's also actually quite a lot of it. So once again, I'm feeling like, okay, adult book, feels YA, but is adult, and then that is also creating some conflict within my brain when I'm trying to read this. So pleasantly surprised by this one, but I'm definitely jumping out of this before I get too invested. I don't want this to be another Chorus of Dragons series. I do think though that if you do like that series, if you like Spellslinger, if you like the Scholomance, and if you like murder mysteries, I guess I didn't get that far into it, but that is like the crux of the plot, because as they're going on this voyage to accomplish this mission, they all start dropping like flies, like dying one by one. But I think that you could have a really good time with this book. The writing is good. The style is just really, really not for me, and I need to cut my losses here, because I don't want to get to the end of this book and be like, okay, like there's things that I liked but I really didn't like this, end up in this Chorus of Dragons situation that I'm in now, where I'm like 3 books deep into that series, and every time I come out of a book, an 800-page book, I'm confused because I don't know if I enjoyed it or if I didn't, and what the fuck is going on. So episode 14 has been a pretty good episode in terms of books read. I enjoyed a lot of what I read during this episode, which doesn't happen very often, and generally had a really good time. We only had 2 DNFs as well, which is unusual, but that means that it has not been a great episode in terms of reducing the amount of books in the stacks, because of the 6 books that I read or attempted to read in this episode, only 4 of them were ones that I pulled from the stacks, and 2 of those were shelves, meaning that I also read 2 books from my shelves as well. But like I said, the results were really good in terms of what I did read. I read and really enjoyed this. This has also been terrible for the stacks because I've now ordered the 2 sequels in these editions, so we're going to end up increasing the stacks instead of decreasing them, but I'm not sorry. I also read and shelved this one, which was a little bit unexpected. I was excited to read it because it had that thriller element, which I mean it does have, but I wouldn't call it a thriller. So I was excited to read it for that reason, but I didn't expect to actually really love it and love the atmosphere, so this was also a win. The Lies I Tell, very much enjoyed it. Great reading experience. Will not be keeping this one. And then kind of the same with 1,000 Pieces of You. I did really enjoy this one, just not enough to keep it on my shelves and make a dedicated conscious effort to pick up the sequels. So unfortunately these 2 books that I read will be scrapped, and then we just have 2 DNFs. This was an Illumicrate episode. All of these books are Illumicrate editions. I feel like this doesn't happen very often. I feel like it tends to be Fairy Loot dominant. I mean, I do receive more Fairy Loots than I do Illumicrates because Fairy Loot have more monthly subscriptions, so it makes sense, but this was truly the episode for Illumicrate, and I think 50-50 out of 4 books for the subscription is pretty decent, if I'm being honest. So in total for episode 14, I scrapped 4 books, which ain't bad, but definitely is not the best episode that we've ever had, and I ended up shelving 2, which wasn't a win for the stacks, but it was a win for me because it's very rare these days that I really thoroughly enjoy what I read, especially enough to actually keep the books on my shelves. So I'm happy with this. So in total for this episode, we reduced the stacks by 4. We have gone from 60 books down to 56. As I mentioned at the beginning of this video, I have not added the books from my February unboxing. I have also received a PR package from Source Books that had quite a few books in it, and my March unboxing, providing that I can film that before I go away at the beginning of April, is also going to be hitting the stacks ready for our next episode. So we are going to have a little bit of an increase. It shouldn't increase enough to take us all the way back up to where we started, but this is definitely going to be the biggest hit that the stacks have taken so far this year. But as of episode 14, we're 4 books down and we are ending the episode with 56 books in stacks. But overall, I think it was a nice change of pace for episode 14 to just enjoy the majority of what I read. If you guys are eagerly anticipating the next episode of Shelve It or Scrap It, I am afraid that there is going to be a little bit of a delay. I'm going to be away for pretty much the first 2 weeks of April, which means that I'm anticipating episode 15 of Shelve It or Scrap It hitting your subscription feed in early May. I'm sorry for the delay, but there's going to be a lot of books in it, so I hope that makes up for the fact that you're going to have to wait an extra couple of weeks for the episode. But I do hope that you guys have enjoyed this one if you've made it this far. If you have, please don't forget to like if you liked it and subscribe if you wanna, and I'll see you guys next week. Bye!
Oh, you bite your friend like chocolate. You say you're go and nobody knows, with guns hidden under our petticoats. We're never gonna quit it, no, we're never gonna quit it, no.